But yeah, let me sort of continue on, man, and sort of see what's next. My God, just. Oh. Man. God. So a quick one there, but I did want to talk a little bit about the mother and sort of some of the female characters and their sort of role in this. Like, I mean, again, the actress here to be crying like that throughout basically this entire movie.
The entire film.
The entire film. And just turn it on like that. Just like, yep, I'm sitting down. Oh, you know.
And how quickly it becomes like, okay, we don't have very much money and these people probably have a little bit more money than we have. So if I say the right thing while I'm wailing, then it's probably going to mean I'll get a little bit more money, like, and the performative nature of that kind of stuff. And again, it's not too dissimilar from the coffin scene in that, like, if you put on the right performance. But another reason I wanted us to talk about this was because it highlights the nurse is the only person that immediately calls the mom on, like, yes. I know you're sad, but you're not that sad. Like, she immediately walks in and is like, stop this. Stop it. I know you're doing this. Like, and that also then calls into light all of the mystery of the movie, which we haven't even really talked about, which I love never gets a full resolution. You know, where was the other family actually another family? Maybe this stuff will be covered in the other films. And I'm excited that I don't know. Was the other family actually another family? Did somebody actually try to kill him? Like, who was in the right? Who's in the wrong? I love that a lot of this stuff just doesn't get addressed to a fine point, because it's not about that. It is about that climactic scene. It's about what it is about. Like, this death happened and the extraordinary circumstances that result when everything starts to go wrong. And the fact that it gives us all these little tidbits and, you know, sets up the mom as being somebody who is willing to kind of go to that length as one of the women in the family to try to secure something, you know, is pretty incredible.
It really is. But I have to, before I sort of talk about any more of the actors in this, I have to, like, I don't know what the style is called, but the way that the way that the camera follows you as you sort of go along, he did this in the last scene as well. It's like you're over the shoulder of each sort of the characters. Like, I love that style that he does. It makes you it's so immersive that you feel like you're in the room, just like watching the scene unfold, like you're just one of the bystanders. And I've seen him do this in other movies as well. It's definitely one of his, like, you know, key characters. If you see that kind of style being played out, you know, it's a Lijo host Pellissery movie. Like, you can just sort of tell that, and it works so effectively in these intimate scenes because, like, it's strange because, you know, she's wailing about the death of her husband, which is typically a very sad thing, but because of the way it's so over the top, it's so obvious that this is not, as the nurse picks out directly, it says that this is you're not being authentic about what you're saying here. There's an ulterior motive you have behind what you're doing here, and that's the truth, you know, of the matter, unfortunately. Like, and again, the director's not afraid to sort of show that, like, in this, you know, when people die, some things happen and they're not always at the best of heart. Like, there are stuff that people try to, you know, use to their advantage, as this movie sort of showing us, unfortunately. And that's the truth. And this doesn't shy away from that. So I love that. But also, like, the sound design, again, like, it's, I mean, her wailing, but if you listen carefully, you hear the wind that's just there. The atmosphere it's creating consistently throughout, along with the visual style and everything like that, of just this, you know, this small bedroom with the body just laying flat inside for the entire time, basically. I just think, my God, like, there's so much to appreciate about this. But yeah, I think the thing I take away mostly is just the actress's performance of just wailing it nonstop, never letting down once, and just being like the same tone the whole time. And she does this thing where she keeps looking over her shoulder to see if they've walked out or not. Like, are you gone yet? Are you gone yet? Are you gone yet? Yeah.
There's that other scene later on too, where or earlier on, I guess from this one, where they were sleeping, right? So she was sleeping next to Easy, and then somebody walks in and they wake up, and she just immediately launches into it again. You know, like
yes.
Again, it's not necessarily funny until like you've watched it a couple times and you know what is actually going on. But especially as a performance, because this is another thing that struck me about the movie. The elements that come into play later on, having to do that, having to work in this very small space, and you've got cameras coming in and you've got lights, but you also want it to look as natural as possible, and you want to hear the wind. Like, there must have been cameras everywhere. There must have been microphones everywhere. It must have been hot. It must have been sweaty. It must have been disgusting in all of these places with all of these people crammed into these little itty bitty spots. And it never betrays that it was any of those things, that it's so much with so little. It is far and away one of the better uses of just entirely practical raw cinema that I've seen in quite some time.
Yeah.
And I've watched a lot of movies, you know, it was all truly in those few moments where I felt like I could breathe. I was just doing the mental math of like, man, what must it have been like to be on this set to make it look like it was just one night into a day.
Yeah, pretty much. Incredible. And I think even in the first scene, just talking more about sort of the cinematics of this, like they were shooting with how much light. There was a moonlight. I'm pretty sure that was natural moonlight. And then it was basically just like a lamp. They had that. It was so dark, and they captured it so well with just the dim lights inside the house. Vivid. It's not a well-lit room.
Yeah.
But you can see everything, and you see all the expressions and everything from everyone's face. You capture everything so well. The sound, the visuals, the lighting, the performances, spot on. The camera work, as we mentioned before, like this is a masterpiece in filmmaking. If you want to learn how to make films, you should study Lijo Pellissery,
really,
because this
truly,
is
man,
ridiculous.
it is
like it's ridiculously good. Yeah.
Unreal. Like, and the fact that it never calls attention to itself. Again, like it never betrays that it is one of the most difficult and challenging things that you could do, especially once we get into the third act of the movie, which is drenched in rain. And never once do you feel like the crew is slogging, the actors are slogging, nothing. Like, unreal.
It really is, man. It's but I think the stuff you mentioned about that mystery as well, because I don't think we have any. I haven't included any scenes around that particular aspect, so probably just want to touch on it a little bit. Like I did try to enjoy that, and also enjoyed the other part about, because again, this movie is so immersive. They include other elements to it. So the character of sort of the priest played by Dileesh Pothen, your favorite Doug. He's in every movie you watch. For some reason, he's appeared in everything.
He's so good, though.
He's so good. He's so good in this one, especially, and how, again, like the fact that it's giving us a realistic picture as to how things are in sort of, Christianity faith sometimes. Not all priests are, pious, or, they're not all, well, they're all pious, but they're not all well-to-do or, meaning well. Like, he's so disinterested in everything that he's actually more interested in the mystery that's self-created. There's not really many elements to say that he was, murdered or anything like that, but because he's informed by two people who, at the end, like those two characters basically who are, circulating all the rumors. One character circulating the rumors. I think those two are meant to be angels, like death. Like one is meant to be from heaven, one is meant to be from hell, because one is always very defensive. Yeah. One is very defensive about saying why you sort of spreading rumors, and one is very proactive on that. He's calling, this woman a whore, and he's saying all kinds of things as well. But yeah, for him to just be like, they put a priest in that kind of role to be like, this guy is not a positive character. He's actually a negative character, this priest is, in sort of a scene about death where you think the priest would be. And we saw similar aspects of this in Joji as well, right? Like there was a similar kind of connotations with
well, and that's another thing with the business of death, right? Like, so you're not necessarily, you're more a gatekeeper of the faith than you are an active practitioner in the faith, right? Because you could argue that the most, faith-bound person in the movie is the friend, his best friend. Like that's the only person that's kind of acting selflessly and actually just trying to get people to understand things. Where the priest is immediately trying to get to the bottom of a mystery so that he can avoid having another body in his churchyard, which later on, again, we get a payoff. The person hired to dig the hole in the churchyard dies in the very hole that he was hired to dig, right? Like,
exactly.
It goes wrong for everyone. And the only through line for that is if you had hubris enough to think you were above something, something was going to go wrong for you. And that's, again, probably tying into the religion. I'm very similar to you in that I respect religion and I am a student of it as much as film and my own personal background has showed me, but I'm not, deep cuts in there. So forgive me if I've, misspoken or spoken out of turn about anything. We don't intend to do that. It's just we may have not noticed some of that subtext in the way that another viewer might. And we don't mean to be offensive in any way. Please understand that. It's just to simply say the movie doesn't have any problem saying like this culture is very rooted in the faith, as are many cultures around the world. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it translates to that faith being kind or benevolent. It is sometimes ruthless and it is sometimes designed to be exclusionary. And in this case, it was.
Yep. And it's cutthroat. Like, he's invested in his own interest above anything else. Like he is not someone that's really forgiving, because we see him, in the moment of Chemban's sort of weakness when he sort of slaps him, that's basically the end for him. He's basically conspiring to basically take this family down in a way. And you could sort of see it like that. But speaking of the friend, man, I think we haven't spoken about him enough. So we're going to see a scene from him. I'm pretty sure I got the scene now, if I got my scenes order correctly. No.
ഞങ്ങളുടെ സുഹൃത്ത് നമ്മുടെ അയ്യപ്പൻ വന്നിട്ടുണ്ട് മെമ്പർ. അയ്യപ്പൻ വന്നടാ. അയ്യപ്പനെ പോലീസുകാരുടെ പോലീസുകാരൻ കൂടുതൽ ആളാണ്. അയ്യപ്പൻ വന്നടാ. ഇത് കേറ്. രണ്ടു വാക്ക് പറഞ്ഞു പോന്നേ. വന്നേ. നീ വന്നേ.
ഒരു മിനിറ്റ്.
എന്താ?
നമ്മുടെ ആശാൻ വീടിന്റെ തല ഒന്ന് ചെറുതായിട്ട് പൊട്ടിയിട്ടുണ്ടായിരുന്നേ. ഇപ്പൊ പുള്ളിയുടെ രണ്ടാമത്തെ ഭാര്യയും കുടുംബം വന്നിട്ട് ആകെ പ്രശ്നം ഉണ്ടായിക്കൊണ്ടിരിക്കണേ. സാർ വന്നിട്ട് എന്തെങ്കിലും ഒന്ന് ചെയ്തു.
അതൊക്കെ പള്ളിയിലെ അച്ഛൻ്റെ അടുത്ത് പറഞ്ഞാണ്. അത് വരാം. ഈ രണ്ടു പേർക്ക് സംസാരിക്കേ.
ഈ സമയത്ത്
പറ്റിയില്ലേ പിന്നെ അവിടെ വന്ന് കാര്യങ്ങൾ ഉള്ളാക്കണോ? സംസാരിച്ചേ.
വേണ്ട സാർ,
സംസാരിക്കണോ? രണ്ടു വാക്കിന്റെ കേസിലേ ഉള്ളൂ.
എല്ലാവരും ഒരു ദിവസം പിരിഞ്ഞു പോകും. അപ്പൊ ബാക്കിയുള്ള നമ്മളെല്ലാവരും കൂടി അവർക്കൊരു നല്ലൊരു യാത്രയയപ്പ് കൊടുക്കണമല്ലോ. അങ്ങനെയൊക്കെ അല്ലേ? ഇല്ലെങ്കിൽ പിന്നെ നമ്മളെന്തിനാ മനുഷ്യരെന്നൊക്കെ പറഞ്ഞ് ജീവിക്കണത്? എനിക്കൊന്നും പറയാൻ പറ്റില്ല സാർ.
കാര്യം പറ. അയ്യപ്പ ഞാൻ പറയണക്ക്
വീട് സാറേ.
ഒരുമിച്ച് പോന്ന്.
I mean, the reason why I included that scene was I want to talk one about this performance a little bit, but also the fact that I think this character is probably the closest we have to a vessel into this movie. Like he probably represents who we might be in this movie, because we don't know the father, we don't not connected so much as to the characters, but he is sort of the character who's basically running the show. Like he's like basically like, look, I'll do everything. I'll call up the newspaper people. We'll go to the coffin place together. I'll go talk to the police about this issue. He's running the show, and so he is kind of just in the crossfire in all of this, as sort of we are as well. Sort of due to the brilliant camera work once again. Just that following him out of the room was incredible. Once again, seeing him in that room, it was incredible. But just the way he sort of breaks down, really, that part really hit me. But what he's saying and how he's so effortlessly able to sort of convey that and just be like, what, the reason behind all that we're doing, like, are we not humans if we don't do this? What's the purpose? If we just let people sort of die on the end of the street, what makes us, what differentiates us? I think it's a great question that sort of this sort of brings about. And he does such a good job bringing that about. And throughout the entire movie, playing that role is fantastic. I really appreciated his performance in this. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I don't have much more to say other than touching back on the point that we just made, which is that he's the only character asking people to empathize and just boil yourself down to the base level of humanity and be like, wouldn't you want at your own funeral? He's not asking for a king's funeral. He is the only one without hubris and is just acting completely selflessly. Yes. He's the only one that is allowed to kind of escape this, just solely scarred by the fact that he had to endure it in the first place. Like not much more goes wrong for him other than the things he has decided to involve himself in, right? And then later on, that just we kind of get a payoff in the one scene where it looks like Easy may be ready to commit further crime, possibly even commit a murder on behalf of doing what he told his father he would do. The only person who can stare him down and kind of get him more focused back is this friend. And that's for good reason, right? Like this is somebody who just solely existed as that person who shows up most times when somebody dies and is like, I will take care of the nitty gritty on your behalf. You don't need to think about that now. And that person is an angel for all intents and purposes. Yeah. Right.
Definitely. I really loved it. And it's really interesting because so one thing I noticed was that his name is Ayyappan, which is a very Hindu name. So he's a Hindu character in this very Christian process of things. And I think that's intentional, because I don't know if there's so much commentary on that, but this is not a Christian movie or anything like that. It's more about community, I think. And that's what sort of, there's lots of elements of that. And that's sort of why they've chosen a character like him to sort of be in this. Like, be like, no, it's not just Christians that do this. It affects the entire community. Even though the processes and the, all the, the doings and everything like that is all Christian based, it actually impacts everybody and everybody's involved no matter what your faith is. So I think that's also why it's a subtle thing. But again, like with how much thought is being put into the writing here as well and the storytelling, I think that's a subtle thing that's also important. That's also there. This sort of is a smart thing to do. But yeah, I definitely
totally
agree with what you're saying. He's somebody that just acts without hubris, and you see the devastation of somebody that's even just the impact of bystanders that this sort of has on people when you sort of see, some of the cruelties, if you want to put it like that, in death and like the stuff that's, you wouldn't, again, I have not seen so many movies take this topic on. When we watch death in movies, it's extremely somber. We see the emotional side of it completely, but this shows you the procedural side of it and sort of some of the realistic things that also go on in the background, which are not so kind, like there's no one really authentically feeling bad for him except for the son, really, it feels like, but he's so shell-shocked that we don't get a raw emotion from him until the end, which is more like, I don't know if it's even about the sadness he has for the loss of his dad, is the sadness for the fact that he can't fulfill the promises that he kept that he wanted to fulfill for his dad. So interesting. But yeah, man, I think we're basically go for it.
That's really all it is. Like I said at the beginning of the movie, I think you just ultimately kind of take something for granted. Like, I'll always have more time to be able to do this the right way. I'll always have more time to be able to make more money. I'll always have more time to be able to tell people exactly what I want. I'll always have more time to be able to set this up. I'll always have more time to be able to talk to my mom and make sure that we have what we need. And I'll always have. And you make those assumptions. Yes. And then it all starts to break down. And death is easily one of the best ways to showcase that. And this movie did it extraordinarily and beautifully. And this scene is really indicative of what happens almost in every death I've encountered that came as a shock, how quickly the entire community gets wrapped up in it, how quickly the rumors start to swirl, how quickly it sours for no reason apparently whatsoever, and how quickly things devolve and how quickly things evolve and how quickly things shatter and how quickly things could potentially grow. And obviously we focused on that on the other way here, but it, like you said it earlier, to be able to focus on these other parts of the business of death, in addition to how people are feeling and how they're emoting, is a really smart way to just kind of make it so that it's the community responding and the environment actually responding, as opposed to just seeing somebody, cry or having one good monologue. Like, nope, we're going to spend some time in this and you're going to see all of the dirt, actually. All of the dirt.
Yeah, literally. And again, that scene was like a minute. Like, it was so short and contained, and yet they were able to do that much with it. It's just incredible when you can do so much in so little time. And again, in the conditions that they had, this was sort of the beginning of sort of the rain scenes when sort of we get to see that all play out. And it's interesting because even I think the graveyard digger, who you could spend a whole 30 minutes talking about him and sort of his storyline as well.
Yes, you
I think he was definitely, he's sort of in contrast to basically everyone else without giving much of a story and things like that. But he gives warnings about it's going to rain, you better put a shed on top. And sort of he's the one at the end who gets the proper funeral. Like the priest comes to his funeral and he blesses him, and he gets a cheap what's it called, the cheap coffin, but it's enough. And there's even little things like, I think the other guy who the father attacked at the start, he tells him to make sure this is the best grave you've ever dug in your life, because right, and then he himself, he's dug it for himself.
Well, and he's given him money, right? Like, so he dies with all this money that he's got in his hands, and he can't use it, right?
That's right.
It's literally, it's the hubris, So even though the guy didn't ask for a good funeral, he asked for more money to be able to do what he was going to do, and as a direct result, he ends up in the very coffin he was digging for someone else.
The grand one.
Pretty much, I'm not sure. We would have to go back and watch it from the beginning. But if you track anybody who showcases hubris, I'm sure they get theirs.
Yes, definitely. I really think that's the thing about this movie. So yeah, incredible, man. Well, strap yourself in now, because I'm pretty sure we're in for one of the, honestly, I'm going to say one of the best performances I think I've seen anyone go unhinged like this. And I love seeing someone go unhinged, but this one was just, oh my God.
When it's earned, right? Like, it's not just like in 300, you've kind of got that like blood, like the blood feud. Like, obviously when somebody's kid dies or when something like that, like there are easy and cheap ways to do it and still make it feel meaningful. Yes. But the way that this movie did it, it essentially spent the entire movie building to it, and it
pretty much.
Boy, did, woo! I'm in. Let's do it. Let's do it again.
The build-up makes it. Yeah, the build-up makes it all the worthwhile. Like the whole story behind it. I can't wait to sort of watch this one, guys. Strap in. This will be a bit longer one. Not too long, but longer than some of the other ones. But yeah, watch along.
First class.
Sound, the echoing. Oh.
I know. Oh, just the raw physicality.
The rain.
Yeah.
Incredible. Oh,
just brutal.
God.
And the camera following along.
Incredible.
That moment. That's what I've been talking about.
That's powerful.
First class self-ready. ഒന്നാം ക്ലാസ് ബാൻഡ് സെറ്റ് വെള്ളിക്കുറിച്ചും തോച്ചക്കാരെ പിടിച്ചു 10 പേരുടെ ദർശനക്കാര് മെത്രാനച്ഛന്റെ ആശീർവാദം ഞാൻ വാക്കുന്നല്ലപ്പാ എന്നെ കൊണ്ടൊന്നും പറ്റില്ലപ്പാ
This is also like that right there where it's crafted where you can't fully see him lift the body out. You just see the other reactions. Like, oh my God. I could scratch my brain thinking about, 10 other scenes that would be similar, and it would do all of those other scenes. And this one a disservice because it is so reliant upon all of the buildup of the rest of the movie and how much, as somebody who's experienced death quite a few times in his life, how much you wish you could kick everyone out that doesn't matter. But then you realize how bristly and how terrible you become. Like it is absolutely just an examination of like, if you could do what you really wanted to do at a funeral, you would do that. Everyone out.
Yeah.
Everyone who doesn't care out. And you would try to do, but like here we get that exploded version of it because everything has gone so wrong. And it just, that performance all the way ultimately leading to him just having that solo exchange over the top of the coffin is extraordinary, exquisite, some of the best cinema I've ever seen. It's so compelling. It's so gripping, and it is worth every second of the movie leading up to it to get to that. And then what we get after it is even more beautiful somehow. Just extreme.
It is so incredible, man. Like just the way that they've done this, you're exactly right, because this movie is such a capsule in that it just happens over like a day, right? It's not like an extended period of time. So we get to follow this character's journey and how much he's struggled, how much he's kept that pent up inside so much that he's not even the echoes at the start. I think before this, there's a scene where he can't hear anything anymore. He's almost like he's disorientated. Like
when he walks in the house, sound shuts off,
Yeah, and he picks up the axe then, and you just see he's transforming into somebody else now. And because of everything else, right? We saw this first scene that we saw at the start right there before, right? We saw he was a happy kind of person, and how much death has affected him, and him not being able to express it and keeping it contained. You get that raw emotion, the physicality, as you mentioned, the breaking out. Like that's the stuff
off of that like 2, 3, 4 days from that, you will feel physically exhausted, hurt. He may have torn something in his own body, but it doesn't matter in the moment. You know, like the only thing that calls him down, and that's why I kept mentioning that scene, is when he finally sees his friend. And it's less about like an exchange. It's more like, you have the permission. I'll keep the rest of these people back. While you do this thing, because I can't stop you. They're like, it's more like, you do what you need to do. I'll be over here. And it like, that was so, and he's just breathing heavy. Like,
that's right.
And the fact that he just kind of blends effortlessly into the scene because of how the camera swoops over and you just see him step in, like all the blocking, especially in a rain drenched sand pit, must have been a nightmare, but it came out pristine.
It's masterful. Like the forces of nature against you as hard as it gets. Like that was heavy rain that they had in between. Because there are moments where I think the other scene when we saw Ayappan walking to the police station, the rain was not as heavy. But in this one, it was fully blown. Like it was very intense, and the mud was flying everywhere. The scene when he gets the log and he starts beating people up, like he is just at that point he's gone. And you're right, I think it's such a subtle and such a beautiful thing that they do. He just swoops in the corner, you see him at the corner of your eye, he's there, and it's just like that's enough. They don't need to say any words. Like that communicates everything. That's what's happening here. Like, I've seen where you are right now, you do what you have to do. I'm just going to stand here. Like, you know, I'm not going to try and stop you from doing what you're doing. I've realized he tried that at the start when he's sort of at the shock. Like, he's like, what's he doing? Let me try and stop him. Maybe I can stop this from happening. Then he realizes the reality of the situation, and he understands, you know, what Easy's sort of gone through better than anybody else, and he just stands there. And you're right. That's why I sort of kept that little scene at the end where they're just sort of looking over, because it's just so well done. It's like, you know, we were in the crossfires when it was required. Now we're pulled back and we're seeing it from a distance, just like the crowd is. So it's such a masterful shot in terms of storytelling, in terms of cinematography, in terms of performance. It's honestly, if Chemban did not win an award for this, I would be very shocked. And if he didn't, he definitely deserves one, because that scene alone is one I don't think I'll ever forget. Like, it is so powerful. Yeah, it is just so powerful. And again, you know, we both have ventured into the world of sound a little bit, and so we understand the complexities of what it requires. The fact that there are so many elements going on here, the cacophony you have of people screaming, you have to highlight his voice in amongst the rain and the sound, amongst all the movement as well that's sort of happening. Because this guy's moving around, there's things that are going everywhere. There's wind, there's thunder, there's shouting, there's screaming,
squelching feet, like. It's the whole 9 yards. Like, it is everything that could potentially, everything that would be the average movie's nightmare is on display in the scream here.
Yeah.
And it is used to tell the story. Incredible.
And then it just stops at the moment when his performance to transform from that raw aggression to that raw devastation that he has when he's just wailing to his father, saying, "I'm sorry, you know, I've let you down. I'm broken." I don't know how you could do anything better than that scene. That is, I was in a trance watching this. Like, when I was there for the first time, I was like, "What is going on?" I could not take my eyes off it. It was incredible cinema, like incredible filmmaking, man. Blown away by it, man. Like,
we have a saying here in the state of Michigan. It's part of our tourism campaign, and it's Tim Allen from the, you know, Buzz Lightyear, you know, the original. And he, you know, gets on there, and it's like this slow music, and then all of a sudden he'll be like, "And that's pure Michigan." And as I was watching that scene, like, and now we just say it for everything, right? Like, and that was pure cinema. Like, it just absolutely ripped me in and like placed me in my seat. This is like watching movies when you were a kid. This is movies without smartphones. This is movies without computers. This is movies without email. That scene is so important and so effectively created that if you find yourself looking away, you probably need to get yourself checked out, because you're probably a psychopath, because it is so thoroughly compelling and extremely well crafted that I was in shock. Like, I literally got done watching the movie, walked upstairs, and just like stared out the window for a while.
Yeah.
Like, incredible.
No, something happened to me, man. I think I saw this movie. I basically got on the Slack and messaged you straight away. Said, "Holy shit, what have I just watched?" And then basically, I think my wife was trying to talk to me, but I could not hear anything. I was just zoned out. I was like, I need a moment or two here. Like, what have I just seen here? Like, I need to actually take a step back and just breathe, because if it couldn't get any better than that, we have a sort of final scene which just sort of leaves us like, what?
Ugh.
You're gonna hit me with this now?
But
So we're gonna
again, incredible. Let's do it.
incredible.
Oh, the like billowing. That was another thing I just
man.
couldn't get enough of.
The sound is moving. The photography, man, the framing, it's... Oh my. Oh my God, man. Like, oh my God. Whoa.
What do you have to say? Because I don't know what to say.
I mean, yeah. That is, I will say, there are certain scenes you will never forget because of the visuals from what we just saw before in that scene. This is a sound I don't think I'll ever forget. Like, it's so haunting to me to have that, the vocals go like that. Like, it's memorable. Like, I mean, it's very easy to remember key scenes we remembered. And, we have key songs that we like. But a scene like this, I don't think I'll ever forget this tune. Like, the ending of this movie, just how deep and haunting it is. Oh, my God, it is just...
And the two boats coming in at like the exact same pace.
Yes.
And, just slowly approaching. And the fact that we never see any motion out of those people whatsoever. Like, it is...
No.
I had a feeling we were going to get something because the song or the music starts and both of those frequencies are kind of resonating, and one could be perceived as hopeful and one could be perceived as sorrowful. And obviously one side is black and one side is white. So it doesn't take much to read into the subtext there, but it was, like both sides are providing you with light and torches and both sides have boats and both things are like, it just, that was the moment that really clinched for me. Like, oh yeah, if on a future rewatch, I wouldn't be surprised if I find all kinds of symbolism everywhere. And you already illuminated quite a lot of it for me. And that comment that you had sent me before we even started, I tried to ignore it while I was watching the movie until that scene. Once that scene hit, I was like, oh, wow. Like the level that comment kind of teed this up for us to be, this movie up for us to be, I was like, I don't know if I necessarily saw that. And then that scene happened. I was like, never mind. It's exactly that. It's 100% that.
Exactly. No. Same. Exactly the same. No, this comment is legendary. So thank you so much, mate. Like we really, really appreciate this one. But yeah, just to sort of read it again, it's sort of, this is the first step of purgatory where the sinned person is accompanied onto the next step of purgatory by the angel of death. So I think, because this did throw me off a little bit because I had to sort of go back and forth a little bit because I saw the colors that they were wearing and the father's wearing white, which was, then I thought, so does that mean he's going to heaven? Then I sort of listened to, I had read something from the director, Lijo, host Pellissery, talking about sort of what this meant, because I would have assumed he's going to hell because of, what this sort of movie has shown us. But I think he had mentioned something like about how black and white is really like we put our own prejudices on it, and it doesn't necessarily mean like, you know, white is going to heaven and black is going to hell or something like that. So I still assume, because there are 4 deaths essentially in this movie, and that's what it's sort of shown. I'd love to get your sort of take on this one as well, but I would think the gravedigger, the bird, and the dog are all going to heaven. That's the boat coming for them. To take them to sort of their next step, and the father's going to hell because they've shown him as someone who's sinful. I don't know if alcohol is included, but in terms of, you know, the infidelity he had with his wife, the aggression that he showed at the start with the, you know, the main guy he just attacked for basically, you know, being angry at him about sort of the comment he made. So I think that's what sort of that's implying. Like that's where they're sort of being heading off to, because they're not all going to heaven. Why would 2 boats come? You know?
Well, yeah, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see, you know, a subversion of our own expectations, because that is the other thing about the, you know, the faith, specifically this faith, is that there is always an opportunity for someone to have made amends at some point, or somebody to have offended in a different way. And part of the whole purgatory journey is that you get to kind of have your time to make your amends. And maybe we'll see both of those boats traveling side by side. I don't know. I'm not going to look up a single thing about that second movie because I want to be as surprised as I was watching this movie. But I'm going to try to keep my brain entirely turned off about it. I just love that both sides are present, you know, like that it is made clear that like you don't necessarily go to one or the other. Both of these boats are coming, and somebody's going to get on one and somebody's going to get on the other, or maybe they both get on both. We'll see. Yeah. But that's another thing that I loved so much about this movie, is that all of a sudden, what has been a very real and grounded experience. Again, if you are more familiar with the faith, you may have noticed, like, yeah, of course, those 2 characters are angels, because at the end here, we actually see them, you know, as angels, right? And like those flapping tarps with wings. You're like, Dad, what? Oh, I'm such an idiot. Like, I'm so smart and I'm so dumb. But again, like it's so well constructed, right? Like a Hollywood version of this is essentially one of the better still bad Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, you know, like the Sixth Night or whatever one where he actually fights the devil. It's something along those lines, right? Like where it plays that End of Days, right? Like it plays that game. Is it not? Is it not? And then we get into the third act and we know. This movie waits until the last 45 seconds to definitively tell you, like,
post credits.
This is what this was. You know, like that's incredible. It's incredible.
No. I mean, you can look into it like that, but I mean, even just as a visual spectacle, like, my God, you know, your senses are on overload watching that kind of scene, because you're like, what am I seeing here after what have I just seen? It's such a perfectly timed scene because you're already in a state of shock after seeing, you know, I think the last scene we have in the movie is Ishi basically over his father's grave, and he puts that
falling over the grave.
Yeah. So you're already like, whoa, this one hit me hard. And then you see that scene, you're like, wow. Okay. What more to say, man? What more to say? This is just, this is incredible.
Watch the movie is it, I guess.
Yes.
Thank you for making the movie. If anyone who made the movie is watching, thank you.
Thanks to everybody who's made this movie.
I have been telling everyone I've ever spoken to in the past 48 hours to experience, not necessarily watching the movie, because there's still a lot of people who won't watch the movie. Those people I know, yeah, sure. But at least let me tell you about it as much as I want to.
But this has been such a fun conversation. This was one hell of a movie. I think we can even skip the IMDb. Do you want to do the IMDb scale?
No, because it doesn't matter. This movie ruled.
Exactly. This movie is the best. Yeah, we're not going to even compare this movie. We're just going to make that a rule. Yeah. If movies are just this good, we're not even going to just do we're not even going to do an IMDb scale. This movie was awesome. Absolutely loved it, and absolutely loved talking with you about it, Doug. This has been so much fun. Thanks to everyone that sort of contributed to, this show so far, for the comments, for the recommendations. People have told us this is a masterpiece. So we completely understand. This is a masterpiece. Like, this is something else. I absolutely love this.
Yeah.
But thanks again. Let us know what you thought in the comments about this sort of commentary, about this sort of movie. And we'll chat to you guys soon.
Thanks again, guys.
Bye.